This week on Jared Scott Outdoors, I'm heading out hunting mountain lions. It's quite an adventure. Stay tuned. Welcome to Jared Scott Outdoors, your source in the field for local outdoor news. Now, because mountain lions are nocturnal, they're pretty tough to hunt the standard way. And so usually you're going to be using hounds to track them down and to tree them. And there's not a lot of people that have hounds. You know, let's face it, they're a lot of work. They eat a lot of food. They require a lot of training. And so there's not a lot of opportunity, I guess, to say for just everybody to go out and hunt mountain lions. And so usually you have to have a good connection to go do that. And I met up with my friend Andy, who has hounds, who does all the work, who does all the training, and he was kind enough to let me tag along on a hunt to check this out. So the first thing I want to make clear is that it's the dogs that are doing all the work and the owner that puts in all the training so that this can happen. Now, it's been over 10 years since I last hunted mountain lions with hounds. And if it's anything like the last time, hopefully we'll be underneath a tree with a lion or maybe under some cliffs. We should be able to get really close to a mountain lion and be able to get some really neat footage. And so you need to make sure you understand that mountain lions are just like any other big game animal here in Idaho, like deer and elk and antelope. You've got to make sure to keep their populations in control. Otherwise, you'll end up having a lot of sick and dying animals. The same thing happens with mountain lions, and you hear about it quite often in the news. You know, a mountain lion attacks a runner, jogger, biker, things like that. Typically, those are starving mountain lions, you know, and so you do have to keep their populations in check. There are a lot more mountain lions out there than you think, and that's one thing I've come to understand hunting and talking to hound hunters and being out hunting is there's a lot more mountain lions than you think, and so they do have to be hunted. They need to be controlled just like any other big game animal. So keep that in mind when you see some beautiful footage, assuming we get some. Now, with that in mind, let's get going. Heading out hours before first light with Andy and his friend, we covered miles on sleds checking for fresh cougar tracks. Not seeing any in the first canyon, we loaded up the sleds and drove to another and then another. Over the course of the day, we checked several areas out and had yet to find any tracks. Even the deer were higher up in elevation than the canyon roads we were riding, so in the afternoon we decided to hike up a few different ridges to see if we could cut some tracks that way. Each of us went up a different ridge, but neither one of us found any mountain lion tracks. I did, however, find a bighorn ram with a ewe that I filmed for a bit, but that was it. So as the sun set, we called it a day. It was a full month before I was able to make it out again with Andy and his hounds. He had been out several times and had treed a few lions as well. When I went back out with him, it was just like last time. Meeting up at 3:30 in the morning so we could drive to the area we wanted to hunt and have time to check as many canyons as possible for cougar tracks. I headed out with Andrew Ford on sleds to check a few canyons while the other guys checked some other spots. Every time we spotted tracks, we'd hop off and check them out. Typically, they turned out to be coyote tracks. We could usually tell deer and elk tracks apart without stopping, but it just depended on the snow conditions where the animals had walked. There was one set of tracks that I think were bobcat tracks, but so far, no mountain lion tracks. By the time we were heading back out of the first canyon we checked in, it was starting to get light, even though the full moon was still out above the cliffs. As you can see, this area looked like mountain lion country. Of course, it doesn't matter how good it looks if there aren't any lions nearby. Leaving that canyon, we rode the sleds to another draw to check out. All right, so as an update, we made it back to the trucks, and it's actually been a few hours. We ended up having some snowmobile issues. A clutch got froze up on one of the snowmobiles. We were about 4+ miles out, and we spent a couple hours dragging, towing this snowmobile before the clutch finally released and we got back to the truck. So nothing to show for it. We did find probably one set of old lion tracks, a few days old. Obviously that's not going to do any good, some coyote tracks and things like that, but nothing so far that we're looking for. We've got some of the other guys up doing some hiking and they haven't found anything either, so kind of got to revamp and maybe check some new stuff. Well, Andrew and I headed up the main canyon and ended up finding the rest of the group. All right, so what we've got here is one of the dogs. They just went up hiking up a canyon, and one of the dogs disappeared on them. They didn't realize it, but it looked like it was on a lion from what they can see from the GPS, that it was possibly on a lion. Just kept going further and further away. Now it kind of held up at about a mile away, so it might have a lion treed up, but it's a mile away and some deep snow and a good 1,000 feet higher at least. Just kind of gnarly, canyony, tough stuff, and we can't quite tell where the dog started at, and so that's kind of what's going on right now, is we're trying to figure out how can we access that area where the dog's at according to the GPS, what we're seeing, because it's just really cliffy out here. So anyways, there might be something going on, we don't know.
Just zip over, you know, a few hundred yards and see if you get closer. But
now they had no idea where Gray picked up the lion tracks, but that was the only explanation on why Gray was on the run and only getting further away. So now they had to make a game plan. As you can see, this canyon is very cliffy, so there was only a couple spots to even access the area Gray had taken off to. Is this where you're thinking yours went up?
yeah, it looked like there was dog tracks that were running up, and so we're holding on to the dogs to kind of clear up the path and see if...
In the end, the guys figured that they may as well just start up this draw towards the hound and whatever she was chasing. Meanwhile, Andrew and I were to snowmobile up the road a bit and see if we could see a better angle in or even possibly hear the dogs. There was a handful of radios between everybody to try to keep in touch. Using the mileage that Andy had told us, which was now 1.5 miles and growing, we were able to get a good vantage point to see the mountain and have at least an idea on where the dog might be. Andy was able to keep track of the dogs by their GPS collars, and so now he could tell that the other 2 hounds had caught up with Gray, and so all 3 of them were together. If you could only see what's been going on the last few hours. Those guys went hiking up. Andrew and I went and got sleds, went back to the truck and got our packs. He got his snowshoes. I failed to bring my snowshoes, so I'm just post hauling it. But we came up around further up the road to try to pinpoint where they were, see if we could get a better angle. And Andy's been letting us know via radio how far they are from him. And just using that kind of information, we've decided they're actually closer to us. They've gone 2.5 miles at least now from where they started. And this is 3-4 foot kind of snow, so it's miserable. And they've put on some serious elevation, really rocky, steep, cliffy kind of stuff. And they just kept going. The dog started out about 1 mile away when they started. Now it's about 2.5 or so from where they started at. We've since come up, fought some snow like crazy, even with our slow machines, just because we're on trail riding sleds, not powder sleds, but we've got up a little closer and we can actually hear the hounds up this canyon. So my guess is we're within 1/2 mile, maybe more, but we're gonna go up and see what's going on, while the rest of them, I don't know, I'm not sure what they're gonna do. They're in a bad situation, tough area. So we're closer. We'll go ahead and slip on in there and see what's going on. Hopefully this snow is it's bad. If you were by yourself here, this could get really ugly fast. Andrew put on his snowshoes, and I just hoped I could follow behind him, walking where he walked. It turned out that the snow was so dry and powdery that even Andrew with the snowshoes sunk in a fair amount. When I walked behind him, I sunk clear to the ground, but at least he was breaking trail to make it a little easier. It was obvious that this was going to be tough without snowshoes, but I figured slow and steady, I should be able to make it. It only took a few hundred yards before I was starting to slow up, and was no longer able to keep up with Andrew's faster pace. Andrew headed off. He got ahead of me with the snowshoes, and it just got too deep. It was up to the top of my thigh, and it looked like up higher I could get into some stuff where the sun has burned off a little more of the snow and whatnot. So I went ahead and skirted up here a bit higher, and it did help out a little bit. I've hit some really deep pockets though. It's just slowing me down. I can barely move very fast. The spots that were only knee deep were tough, but I could handle it and actually start to make some headway. But then I'd hit spots like this that were to the top of my thigh and deeper, where I struggled so much. In fact, in a few spots, I would have to crawl to get to some more shallow snow.
Holy cow. Getting to that point where I just wanted to get to this edge here so I could decide if I kept going or not, because without the snowshoes this is killing me. And kind of putting myself in a bad situation. However, getting here, I tied back in with Andrew's tracks, and I can hear the dogs quite a bit louder. They sound like they're just down in the draw. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep on going. Yeah, every now and then they sound really close, so I'm hoping they're only 300-400 more yards, which at the rate I'm going will still take an hour to get there, but I'm this close, so we'll see if we can get there. This has been brutal.
Compared to the last section I'd been hiking or crawling in, the next couple hundred yards were a little easier. For the most part, it wasn't quite as deep on this steeper south-facing slope. It was still tough, mind you, but I started to get my hopes up that I could at least get to the dogs if they weren't too far.
You know, most people, when they think of hound hunters, they think that they've got an advantage. And in some ways they do. However, getting this lion tree today and getting to it will have been well earned. And if you know any hound hunters, you actually know that they spend days and days and hours. Every time they've got a day off, it's out chasing lions, it's out training their dogs. So every little bit is earned. Kind of like this hike right now. Post holding it up to my thigh. So, when you hear about hound hunters in the future, give them the credit they deserve. It's now about 4:30 and I'm close. However, they were further than I thought. I got where I thought they were and they're still quite a bit further away. The snow's so bad that I've had to crawl. But I'm so close I don't want to leave. I can hear them howling and right there, but I'm just too close. So I've crawled several hundred yards. I'm just completely wasted. But it's hard to turn around when it sounds like they're right there. If it doesn't end soon though, I'm gonna have to.
It's easy enough to film yourself when you walk, but I just had no way to film myself while I was crawling. It's hard to explain the situation I was in and even the desperation I felt at being so close, yet so completely exhausted and not able to move any quicker. In fact, I could only imagine what people would think if they saw me crawling on the snow. It had to have been quite a sight.
I've only got about 100 yards and then I'm cliffed out. So if this lion's in the cliffs up higher with the dogs, I'm toast. Hopefully it's there because I'm physically gone. I just don't have anything left in me. And somehow I gotta get out of here, but I just hope they're not up in the cliff stuff up higher than what I can do, because I can't do much more.
I could hear the guys up ahead and could tell they indeed had a lion treed up, but I just couldn't move any faster. By now the other hunters had made it to the tree as well, even though they came from the other direction 3 miles away. I was really afraid they'd end up taking the lion before I got there, even though I was so close, and that would be very demoralizing for me.
Andrew!
So I yelled at the top of my lungs until they heard me, so they knew that I was there and would wait. As it turned out, none of them knew I was even coming, because Andrew just assumed I had stopped and stayed back with the snowmobiles. As you can hear, they were close, but they were up a really steep part that went up to the base of the cliffs. The snow in this steep section was about up to my belt, and it was so dry that your feet just went right to the ground and then slid out from under you. It really felt like you were trying to walk up a hill of marbles. It was ridiculous. After struggling for about a half hour and only making it up about 50 yards, I yelled at Andy and had him bring me some snowshoes. Then we both had the same issue to go up, even with the snowshoes. I couldn't believe how tough it was just to go 100 yards. Finally, with every bit of energy spent, I made it to the tree the hounds had been under for hours now.
All right, so everybody had to wait for me. I was the last guy here, but they waited. They had to bring me some snowshoes for the last 100 yards.
This is a nice picture shot right here.
Because I just couldn't come up.
Good go. Stay.
But they waited,
Stay.
and now they're getting ready to take it.
Stay.
Working up just past the tree, I positioned myself in a good spot to see the cat. With the cougar having been in the tree for literally hours now, it had settled in and just was watching the commotion below. Caden was the designated shooter, and while I was struggling to get up the hill, they had already found a good shooting position. It wasn't the biggest lion on the mountain, but after all the work to get this lion treed and get to it, made it a trophy. I've learned a long time ago that a true trophy isn't about the size of the animal, but more about the experience in getting it and the memories made with those that are along for the adventure. You'll see that when he shoots, his first shot goes high, as he was so close, and he didn't adjust for the distance. After that, however, he quickly adjusts his aim. Luckily, Andy knew how the dogs would react to the shot, and so he was prepared, holding tight to the hounds. They knew what had just happened and wanted in on the action. As the lion quickly ran out of sight after getting shot, Andy gave the cougar time to expire, and then eventually released the hound so they could make sure it was down.
Ready? All right. Go get him, girls! Go get him! Go get him, girls!
Sure enough, it didn't go too far, but it was so steep that after some high fives and a few quick pictures, they got the cat down to where it leveled off a bit.
All right, so we've got Caleb here, the shooter, successfully got him a beautiful lion. I'll tell you what, that was the hardest lion I've ever chased. I haven't chased a lot, but that was probably the hardest hike I've ever done, I think, for being just a mile. I'm physically spent. I don't know about you guys. These guys came from 2.5, 3 miles from over that way, crossing through all this snow. And so, what do you think of this?
It's definitely worth it. I mean, I was up there almost dying on the side of the hillside, and I was like, I hope there's a cat up there. If not, I'm gonna be ticked. But oh yeah, definitely worth it.
Came together in the end. So now it's getting dark. We got to get out of here. It's going to be a long, long haul. And hopefully we can all get out in good shape. But anyways, that's good.
If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to the Jared Scott Outdoors YouTube channel.